Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire. Hi, I'm Doug Edwards, and this is the Reluctant Youth Worker on Fire. And today I'm interviewing Mrs. Nancy Velez, who is principal. I knew her when she was a teacher and seen her at several schools as a principal. She's an A++ person and principal. Also worked in the county office, so she knows what school board things are like. But most of all, the one thing I know about her is that she loves students and she loves people, and that's a big deal. Nancy, you know what? I think that's one thing that I believe about you as a principal, and in general about people who are in teaching for the most part and end up in the administration area, that you still have a passion for students. You really want the best for them. Mm-hmm. So tell me, first of all, middle school, high school, college, who influenced you?
I actually grew up in an educational family. My dad was a principal, so yeah. That's just the only life I really knew. We lived right next to the high school, and that my entire life revolved around high school. Where other kids had movie stars who were famous that they really were impressed with, it was the high school kids and the plays and the sports and just everything about high school. So,
was it you that told me about hearing someone, or you maybe said in your speech to the seniors about hearing the high school graduation or
oh, yeah.
Was that in your speach?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I thought so.
I went to graduation every year.
Yeah, tell them about what you're hearing that across your house.
It was always inspiring, and it was always beautiful, and the kids were so excited, and the parents were excited, and it was a beautiful sight, and I just love graduation, and I can't imagine not being there celebrating with the kids on a pretty significant milestone in their lives.
You know, that was evident. I've been to a lot of graduations as a volunteer. The one thing I really pick up on is heartfelt. And your speech was just incredibly heartfelt. I'm sure you spent time on it. You're an educator, you know, that's what you do. But there's a couple things that appear to me. One is that it's heartfelt. The other thing is that even to a large group, you're personal. And that's a big deal, especially in communication.
A lot of those people out there I had as students. It's a little scary.
I know, I understand that.
And when I start having their grandparents, then I know I'm in trouble. So,
exactly.
No, it is. It's a very emotional night, graduation is, and I actually have to write the speech, because if I tried to do it and looking at the kids and not having something in front of me, I probably would not be able to get through a speech at graduation.
Yeah, so. I understand that. I mean, because it is emotional. It is. You know, people would think, I believe, that because you've done this for a while,
right,
that maybe things just become rote. But what I've found that's not true. Each year is still a year of, in fact, that comes back to that, you don't do this because it's a job.
Right.
You're doing this because you really love people, you really love students. Everybody does not love students, do
right.
Does everybody love them?
No, and I can tell you right now that I can teach teachers how to teach, but I can't teach them how to like kids.
No.
And if you are not there, then this is not the line of work, because kids do things that can hurt you sometimes,
yes,
and make you feel bad and make you angry and get you frustrated. But you have to always remember that they're kids and they're still in their learning stage. And,
that's right.
And the thing about graduation and why it's always different is because the kids are always different. You know, so many of those kids had a story that nobody's ever going to know, but we know. And some of those kids, you know, you got these kids who have a lot of support all the time, and you know, they walk across the stage and it's a great night and they're going to go off to college and this is wonderful. And then you have that child who didn't have a lot of support, but still worked hard and maybe didn't do it always the right way, but then found theirselves as they go through high school. So yeah, every class is different. They really are, and it's interesting how different their personalities are each year.
Yeah, and an entire class can take on a personality.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Communities do that.
Yes.
And
yeah.
so this is, someone said it, I've said this for years, but some other educators said it, microcosm of the community.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is condensed.
Absolutely. And you know, I used to tell parents, and I tell kids this, a lot of times when we say, no, we're going to follow the rules, or this is the way we're going to do it, and we're not going to change, it is a microcosm of society. And when you get out into society, sometimes that bureaucracy is going to kill you. So you might as well find out about it now, and how will I learn how to deal with that? Mm-hmm. How do I get around it? You know, because you know me, I've never been real good about bureaucracy. And so as a result, I figured out ways to get around those things. You know, how can I do what I want to do and do it where I'm not breaking the rules, but I probably am going around a lot of barriers as I'm going toward it. And kids need to be able to be problem solvers.
And that's what you're doing. That's, I mean, by doing that, because bureaucracy is supposed to be about the common good.
Right.
And so sometimes when you do the common good, there's uncommon situations, and so we should be able to manipulate and go around certain obstacles, because there is a loophole. Sure. To help this situation. Right. And if we're strictly by the rules, then we forgot the spirit. That's right. And so, you know, you deal with a lot of educators, and you've been on all these levels, and you grew up in it. That makes you a very small percentage, you know. And so, tell me what you tell people that are thinking, high schoolers, college students, that are thinking about a vocation. Why would you do something like this? Why would you work with students on any level, whether it's in a public school or in a community level, whether it's volunteer, or, you know, but let's just go for the education thing, because that's where you are. Why would they even think about going into teaching in this day and time? Well,
First of all, I have to believe I impact children, and by doing that, I'm impacting our future. And our kids are our future, and if I can do something that's going to positively impact them, which will ultimately impact the future, which ultimately impacts my retirement, because these kids are going to be the ones who take care of me. I can't tell you how many times I go into hospital emergency room and one of my students is there, or, you know, I go to the post office, or I go get my car fixed, or my air conditioning, you know, all these things. And if I'm part of making sure that our students are good community members and members of the community, and raising their own children, and you know, we live in a wonderful country that is based on all of these tenets. And to be able to impact students, to me, is the most important job you can have. So I have no problem trying to talk my children and other people into education. My daughter is an educator. I recruit kids all the time. I think if you look around this school or any of the other schools I've been in, you'll see my former students as teachers, because when I see a really strong person who I think is a positive influence for students, they should be there. They should be there helping them. And it sometimes breaks my heart when I hear people say that, you know, they'd never go into education, and why would you do that? And there's a lot of
people need to be in education if they're saying that?
No, but I think there's people who feel that educators today do not get respect. And being here at the school, sometimes that happens there. But it's such a small percentage at the end of the day of people who really don't respect educators. It's a very vocal, and sometimes they take up a lot of our time. And there's some I'm never going to win over, but I would bet that's 1%. Yeah. And so why would I change my belief system for 1%? You know, I'm going to always go with that 99% and keep working with it. And it's it's a life that has been well lived for me.
Well, and it has. I mean, everyone that knows you knows that, and we see that. And you bring a piece. I've never said this to you, but you bring a piece to the situation. I've seen you in different environments. At Leesburg High, I never went there, but some of the other environments you were in, even at the school board, and it seems like you have this calm demeanor, peaceful. Everybody. Now, is that a natural thing, or is that something you worked on?
I think there's people who might disagree with you about that
well, I'm
sometimes.
sure we all have
but what was interesting,
right?
It's interesting you said that. Just probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had something going on at night that somebody had forgotten to do a very major part, which then required all these kids to come up with some information that we didn't have yet. And everybody was freaking out. And I walked in and I said, "What are y'all doing?" And so when I go into a situation that people are freaking out, I tend to be totally calm. The minute that somebody else takes over that piece, then you'll see me go, "Woo!" But
Right.
yeah, no, when
understand that.
everybody else, yeah.
Your leadership comes out.
Yeah, when everybody else is losing it, I tend to be very calm and say, "What's the problem? What do we have to attack first? Where should our first focus be?" And then I move. Yeah, I do that. And I don't know if that's how I was always. I can tell you I wasn't like that when I was younger. But one of the interesting things, and I'm sure you're aware, where they do the quadrants and they ask you a bunch of questions and then you plot where you should be.
Yes.
And in my earlier years, I was the big idea, let's do this kind of person, and I probably drove those people that needed details crazy.
Yes.
And so probably for the first 10 years of 8 to 10 years of being a administrator, I tended to be up there. When I did it the last time about 8 to 10 years ago, I was a complete circle around the middle. And what that meant, to me at least, was that when you come in and you're one way, that's how I treat you. If you come in and you're going crazy, my job is to get you calmed down. If you come in and I know you're a detailed person, I need to be detailed with you in order for us to work together. So I think over time I've just my leadership style has evolved to meet the needs of those people that I'm working with.
And I studied leadership. And so you said exactly what they talk about in balanced leadership, that we have to, and the perfect way, because it's a personal thing, it's a face-to-face, and the way that you become the most important person in the room is that you adapt to the people that you're with and you focus on where they are.
Right.
And that's what you do, whether that's natural, whether that's study, or whatever it is. I had to study that.
Right.
And look
I'm
for
sure
that.
I did too. I think you evolved though as well.
Yeah.
A lot of it is reading and finding out about leadership and what different people's leadership styles. I worked through that in my master's to get when I became at leadership, and then when I started working on my doctorate, the same kinds of things. You're always looking at different leaders, and I'm sure all of that over the years has influenced me to the point where I can walk into just about anything and say, "It's okay. Everything's solvable." May not be what everybody wants, but everything is solvable because tomorrow's going to come tomorrow. Anyway, that's just how it is.
And how do you separate? And this is because this is not just for this area. This is for anyone who goes on the podcast and looks at it. And that's why I have quality people like you. This is who you need to listen to, people. I mean, I've seen her in action and years of experience and consistency. So tell these people that are already in education that they had that 1% hit them, and it's just about knocked them out. How do you recover from that? Well, and there's various ways, I'm sure, but tell me what you would tell a teacher or an administrator that's just been hit hard.
you know, and that really does happen, and you get up and you just go, why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
But then you walk in, and what I do is I start walking through classes and seeing kids. And I go out in the courtyard and I see the kids. And that reminds me of why I do what I do. That really does. And, you know, this past year, I was coming into this year, I happened to run across something called the Happiness Challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a book, and it talks about this 20-day challenge where you, and I wish I had thought to bring it out, but it, you know, every day you look for 3 good things that happened, and every day you do something healthy for yourself, and every day you make sure that you go and thank somebody for something that they've done. And it forced me, and I did. It was a 21-day challenge, and every day, well, I thought I was going to do it every day. I would kind of journal and blog to the teachers, and at first, I'm sure they thought I was really being goofy. And toward the end, one teacher who I've known, he was here when I was here 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. He wrote back and he said, I thought this was really dumb, but I'm really kind of enjoying it. But it forced me to every day look at the positives, and it was really helpful. And everybody started kind of doing some silly things, and I think that's what happens. You almost sometimes have to force yourself to look at all the good things that are going on, because when all bad things are hitting all the time, you lose sight of it. And so that forced me to do that kind of stuff. And I think
that's absolutely. And what was the name of that book again?
The Happiness Challenge.
Do you remember the author?
Sean Asher. I can give you I give you the author.
Yeah.
Sean Asher, I think it is. ASCHOR.
That's perfect, though, because I think most of us need. And I'm looking at coaches now. Most of us need some kind of coaching in life. Maybe you can't afford a coach, but your coach is through a book, or your coach is through someone in your community. Multiple mentors. You need one mentor, you need multiples.
Having somebody to call up and just say, and then telling you something even worse is better, because you go. I had one girl say, "Well, I thought my day was going bad." So you know, and the good days always will outweigh the bad days.
And that's something that you would tell them. Okay, guys, you know, don't make your decision today.
No.
Not while you're hurting.
Right.
But make it when you're what? When would you make a decision about starting over, leaving, going on?
You got to make...
After you hit, how long do you think you should wait?
Oh, you easily can't do it on the day you're upset. I would wait till things calm down, and then take time and assess what's going on around you and what you're going to lose. You know, sometimes you really have to look at why did you go into this job? And if you leave it, what are you going to lose? And if these two sides, this side outweighs it, then you need to go, because probably it's not the best place for you to be. Because you don't come into this job because you get to be in charge. Because there's a whole lot of things that you're not in charge of. As much as you want to be in charge of,
absolutely,
you're not. And being in charge means that you're doing what is the best thing for the company, and in this case, it's our constituents.
Yeah.
This is my company, and it's what's the best thing for kids. You know, sometimes we tend to look at what's most expedient, and we can't do that, because we're not dealing with widgets, we're dealing with kids, and sometimes you just can't go that route. But you really have to outweigh. You know, what are your needs, and are you meeting them? And for me, it's never. It is always, this side always wins. And I do have days, though, where I get up and I think, I can't make a decision today. This would be a bad day to say I'm retiring.
Right.
And I don't. And that's just good common sense for anybody that's making a major decision. You don't make it just because somebody's forcing you. You got to really think about it. But those
who's your fail-safe, though? And let's focus on this. I was thinking of this while you're saying that, and I've thought of situations I was in, because we're talking all kinds of volunteers, community leaders, because there's volunteers, and you know this too, that have been around forever, and their passion is there. They just don't get paid. Right. They're spending the hours, but or do you talk to? One thing is the kids, and I had to do that too. I would, I had to go hunting for kids because I was in a situation with when I was in Orlando, on campus life or wherever. I didn't have students coming to me.
Right.
I had to go to them.
Right.
I had to go, and see administrators and teachers and students and families. I had to seek it out, and it was a depressing thing at times when I couldn't get there. I couldn't find them.
Right.
And that's what I'm about.
Right.
So, who would you say to? And I may have lost part of where I was going with this. But who would you say to go to? We talked about other people, but who would you go to if there's no one to go to? I mean, where are we going to go then? And there's days like that, I can't call my buddy. I mean, there's times when I can't call him because he's going to say this. I can't, and I can't see students today. They're gone.
Right.
So is there another venue, another avenue?
Well, I come into myself and my own beliefs, and I have to talk to myself and say, all right, take it down a notch. And I actually do a lot more of that, where I just sit there and, because where I may not have recognized that when I was younger, that I was going, woo, I recognize that now. I may not recognize it as it's happening, but within a 24-hour period, and I just have to take myself to my private little place and sit down and talk to myself and say, okay, is this what you want to do? What do we really have to do in this situation? And no, I talk to myself a lot. I'm a 3 in the morning. I used to text people, and now that they have their phones next to their bed, I mean email. I can't even do that anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So
let's talk about home, and we're not trying to get you inside your home here, but one of the difference is, how do you leave school at school? And that was difficult for me. I knew better, even in community work I did, but it was a fight. So you've got these emotions that are here, and the incredible thing, I'm pausing all this, the incredible thing is, it was so, when I would analyze it, I would go, oh my goodness, teachers should have, principals and coaches should have the most influence over these kids. They're with them the biggest chunk of their day, and every day for the week. They know each other probably as good as they know their families, sometimes better. So how do you leave that here and go home, and how do you live that life?
Again, I'm better at that than I used to be. And I was fortunate because my children went to the high school where I was principal, so, I was fortunate in that sense. But since I've had grandchildren, I just go over there, and then you can't remember those things. So it works out really well for me. Yeah. I just go watch them, and that's the end of it for me. And
because they're not going to let you go there.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah. And that actually, it was when you have your own children and they're growing up and you're all going 100 miles an hour and you're building your home, you're building your, getting them ready for college or the workplace, whatever they're doing, you kind of don't have that sense. And then when I had the grandchildren, it was like, you know what? All of this can go away because this is a good place. So with the grandchildren, I just go over there and I sit and play with them. And we play cards and we read books and have a good time. So that's how I separate that now. Yeah.
And other teachers will find other things, but they need to find something. Right. Administrators,
find a passion.
If they don't have grandkids, they need to find a hobby.
A passion.
Their passion.
Yep.
That's right. And
some are fishing. Some.
Yeah. They work with cars or whatever. What are some things that you just, no one's really let you say, that you would like to say to, I'm not trying to get you in trouble.
No, don't get me in trouble.
No, I'm just, what are some things that you wish you could say to teachers, but nobody's asked you, or the opportunity hasn't come up, or volunteers? Let's start with volunteers. You deal with a lot of volunteers too. And that's a different world. They're not paid. Volunteers can sometimes, how do you fire a volunteer? Right. Sometimes it's tough, and one book writer said, great student work that he was doing, and he said it's really hard to fire volunteers, so choose them well. You don't always get to choose.
Right.
So what would you tell volunteers, though, that about their value?
Well, you know, if somebody is a volunteer and what they want to do really isn't working out, we've got to find another avenue for them to travel. And it may be still here, but doing something else. And,
Yes.
and I'll be honest with you, I have had to fire some volunteers.
I have too.
Yeah, but what I did was find, you know, unless they were doing something that was completely wrong, but if they're just not helpful in what they want to work, who they want to work with, we find other places for them. As far as being at a school and teachers, absolutely. My first thing is, if you don't like kids, don't be here. And honestly, I say that to my teachers.
Yes.
On the first day of school, I say, if you don't like kids, this just isn't the right place, and let me know and I'll find somewhere else for you to go.
Yes.
And that doesn't always work out, but I do say that. The other thing is that you gotta leave your problems at home. As much as we all have our problems at home, and we do, we all have our trials and our happinesses, and you know what, we got to leave all that at home.
Students have a long memory.
Yep.
Of their teachers.
And you got to be here for the kids during those, because as much as we think we have so much time with the kids, we really only have 6.5 hours every day with them.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to give your full attention. And so I feel pretty strongly about that. I feel very strongly about being here. Being here is important. Attendance is, you know, I think it's important for our kids to be here, and it drives me crazy when people and parents don't think it's important. It is
Right.
important to be here,
Yeah.
but then my teachers need to make it that it's important to be here as well.
Yes.
So those are probably my two big things. It's important to be here. What we do here is important. And any teacher that doesn't think that is it hurts me. It really does hurt me.
I
And
know
to
it
have-
does. I'm sure it does.
Yeah, and to have somebody here that doesn't think that their job is important and what they do in the classroom is important, I would, if I could eradicate that, I would.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's probably the biggest thing, is what we do is important, and you diminish this school and this system and you know, the educational system in general if you don't realize that.
Yes. Okay, now, give me your best story. It's student world. You don't have to give any names, of course, but give me your best story, the one that just made your year, not necessarily this year, any year.
There's so many, I mean, there really
Give
are.
me several. I don't.
Well, I actually just told one the other day. When I was teaching here back in the 80s, I had a young man who was one of my students. He was a great athlete, good-looking kid, smart kid, but he was really just not doing what he needed to do in English. And I went to his coach and I just said, you know, I'm kind of struggling with him. And the coach started working with him, and he and I were working together, and one day he got an A on a test. So I called home and I said to the young man, I said, hey, you know, is your dad there? And he said, oh no, ma'am, he's not here. I said, well, you know, I'm calling to tell him you got an A on the test today. Dad, it's for you. So the father gets
That's
on the
hilarious.
phone and I'm talking to the dad. He's saying nothing. And I'm saying, yeah, you know, he's really doing well in class. He's got an A in my class, and he got an A on this big test today. And, you know, I call home when things aren't going well, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm really proud of him. Not a word. Silence. And I said, Mr. So-and-so, are you there? And he said, yes, I am, ma'am. But my kids have been in Eustis schools for 19 years, and you're the first one who ever said something nice about them. And I'll tell you that drove everything I did from that point. Because, people say, you ought to call home good times and bad times, but you get caught up in what you're doing when you're teaching. And back then, I had 180 kids.
Yeah.
And, but I was doing something, I was in a class and somebody had said we should do that, and I did it. And talk about a reward for me and a reminder. That was huge for me. And that's why I try to always make sure that we're looking at the good, because again, I go back to 95% of what happens here is always great or good. And
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good to hear,
Yeah.
because people need to remember that.
Right. And it's that percent of things that aren't, that take up our time and make us forget why we're here. And you always have to go back and revisit that 95%. And
Yeah.
and I would move that higher to 99, because truly,
It's just that the hurt hurts.
Yeah, it hurts.
And we remember pain
Yes.
more better than we do
Yes.
good feelings,
Right.
unfortunately. And the old saying, if you get, one bad comment, it takes 10 to
Yeah.
comment. I'm not so sure 10's enough.
well,
But
and
sometimes-
it's sad,
Mhm.
and it's that old saying, don't tell me what you did before, show me today.
Right, right.
Forget about yesterday, and it's
What have you done for me lately?
yeah, it's a little hard.
Yeah.
That's a little hard when people have poured their heart and soul into this. So
Yeah, there's all these dynamics. How many students are in this particular school?
about 1,300.
And you've got 1,300 dynamics times their families, times the teachers, times their families,
Right.
times whatever's happening in the news.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all these multiplication factors we forget about from the outside looking in. I was always amazed, and I wasn't amazed at first. It took me time being with administrators
Right.
and seeing their hearts and teachers and things, that how could a parent come in and chew you guys out? What are they thinking? They're not thinking. They're thinking about their own pain.
Right.
We understand
And their
that.
own child.
And their own dynamics, and that is their responsibility. We get that.
And it's their world and their perception, and that's one of the things that I would tell any administrator, any leader. You got to remember, it's their perception. I can't.
It is.
Their perception is 100% of their reality. So I got to remember that. And lots of times you just let them talk to you, and no matter how much you want to say that's not true, it is true to them.
Yes,
So
it
you
is.
just have to keep moving forward and remember that. That probably is the other big piece of advice. Their perception is 100% of their reality, and you got to remember that, and then just work with them until you can get them to a point that they're going to listen to you, because up until then they're not. So
I'm not sure that there's that many more things. There's hours that and I know that we could go on and on with various situations and various individuals. Tell me your best teacher story, and then we'll let you. This is it. Then we'll let that one go.
my best teacher story. I think it would have to be a combination of the fact that I have so many of my former students working for me. I mean, that
That's a legacy.
it really is. It's so good to see them, and they're really great. I mean, Haley can tell you, she's got a great one with Mr. Liegler, and then we've got Brittany Beal, and I just hired another one, another teacher, and I have another young lady coming from another school. I mean, that is, and what makes me so proud is they're good. They're good at what they do, and they love what they do. To me, that's a reward. And then my own child.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
those are, people don't
Yeah.
follow people's footsteps when they were as close as you were to all these people,
Right.
unless they felt a positive impact.
And truly, and I think if you heard the speech the other day, that's the thing, and probably a good teacher story is I had a teacher over at Mount Dora, and he was hard. I mean, if he heard there was going to be a senior skip day, he gave a test. If they were going to go on that ski trip, he gave a test. But the kids never messed his class either,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
what he believed what he was doing was that important. And so it was so easy to always back him, because he never, ever gave them wasted time. He gave them his full attention all the time. Well, when he was going to retire, I got a letter from a former student from probably 25 years before. And he wrote about how hard he was on him and how he never gave him a break. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be one of these really mean letters. And at the end it says, and you were the only teacher who ever made sure that I was going to get an education. You would not tolerate my failure. And I thought,
wow.
That's where we all are. I don't want ever for a kid to think I gave up on them and would allow them to be a failure. So that was a great story, and he was so funny. He said at the end of it, he just looked at me, he says, that kid really was a jerk. He says, I can't believe he wrote that, because the kid was, he was a senior with senioritis, and you can't tell me what to do. I'm 18. I'm a grown man. Yeah. Talk to me at 50.
Yeah, right. And
so
I
it was
had
kind
a
of cool.
student years ago, and his mom said it too. He went off the deep end with some things, and it was hurtful to me. It was hurtful to him that I knew.
Yeah.
And we couldn't quite get a relationship back. And Mom said, don't give up on him. And he said to me one day, he says, please don't give up on me.
Yeah.
Okay. Those, and you're getting this in saturation. You're getting those moments in saturation. And it's so, and I'm saying this to you because I don't know when I'll ever get to say it to you again. That it's empowering for people to understand that. And that's what I hope that some of this does, empowers people to project to go farther.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.